Hello, this is Alex, and in today's short Lightroom video I want to look at 3 different methods that we can use to apply a finishing touch to our photos. When I'm working with relatively moody scenes like these, I often reach a point where I feel that I'm pretty much done with the picture and I like the result. And then my final look goes to the histogram to see how I utilize the tones in the image, how the tones are spread out in the image, to see if I can perhaps optimize that and increase the image's overall punch or contrast. In this particular photo, I like what I have done. It's a hefty increase in contrast by means of using the basic panel and adding some color touches here to enhance the mood. But what's lacking is, of course, utilizing these whites and highlight areas that are not filled with a lot of tones here. Obviously, I don't want to change anything here in the shadow areas. These are good, and I don't want to make them any darker by means of contrast, because contrast stretches the histogram in both directions. Dark tones get darker, light tones get lighter. I also don't want to use exposure, because that will make my dark tones lighter here. So a good candidate for that is obviously whites, which is only the rightmost part of the histogram here. And indeed, when I push that slider, you see I can increase the punch here a good bit. I feel like if I would push that even further, it would be too much already. But for the sake of demonstration, there's a little trick that we can use, a little bit of a hidden feature perhaps. You can press and hold the Shift key on your keyboard, and then double click this label whites here. And then Lightroom will maximize the white slider, also works for the black slider, so that no clipping here would occur. But as you can see, this is just way too much. The clouds begin to look as if they're blown out, even though they're not. This is too much for an image like this, and it kind of ruins the mood. So I don't want to do that. But for a great many photos, the technique of pushing the white slider actually works really well. Here's a back of my original value where I ended up at plus 27. So for this particular photo, I want to target the brightest tones more precisely. And I can do that in the tone curve panel. I simply use the parametric curve, which has these 4 parameters here, and the separation points that can also be adjusted. And obviously I would pick the highlight slider here, and I simply push that one to the right. And you see how really only the clouds, the brighter tones here, respond to that, and how I can push this all further than I would be able to do with the white slider. And the effect is still limited to the clouds. Maybe a plus 80 just looking at this cloud here is a little bit too much, so I would dial that back a little bit to preserve that somewhat somber mood, but still improving the overall punch of the image. Here's what that looks like. When I click and hold my left mouse button on that eye symbol, I can deactivate this tone curve panel's adjustments. And then this is what it looks like after. And you can clearly see how very subtle this adjustment is and how very targeted, and it only affects the brightest highlights. The third method that we can use to maximize our usage of the histogram's brighter tones here to add punch would be to use the point curve. This lets us add points freely here to change the tones, but in this particular instance, all I need to do is grab the white point, and paying attention to my histogram here, I drag this to the left while keeping it at the topmost part, so that anything that doesn't have any information here now gets information by stretching the entire histogram to the right without changing the shadows itself. The shadows do get a little bit brighter with this technique because all the tones get lifted here, as you can see. So this white point adjustment would be the third technique that we can use to stretch the histogram out here a little bit. Maybe for this particular image I want to do a little bit of both. I want to push the white point, then go back to my parametric curve, and also give these clouds a little bit of an additional push. It doesn't have to be much, just that they have more definition here against this forest. And then this is what the final adjustment looks like. Turning it off, turning it back on, you see it has much more of a impact here and glow than in the original. And that's all for today. I hope you liked this short Lightroom video. Thank you for watching. Bye.